Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the data behind one of the most polarizing figures of the 21st century, Mark Zuckerberg. We're going to take an energetic, strictly objective look at the man who, quite literally, rewired how humans communicate. To really grasp the sheer scale of the empire he built, we kind of have to start right here. $220 billion. As of December 2025, that is Mark Zuckerberg's estimated net worth. It's a massive, almost incomprehensible number that consistently places him among the absolute wealthiest people on the planet. But, how exactly did he get here? And more importantly, what happens when one person holds that much economic and social power? So here's how we're going to break down this incredibly complex persona into 4 distinct chapters. First up, the programming prodigy. Second, the hacker way. Third, under the microscope. And finally, media and philanthropy.
All right, let's kick things off with Chapter 1, the programming prodigy, from Zucknet to Harvard. We're going way back to the beginning here, long before the billions.
Just look at the sheer momentum of his early technical output. At just 11 years old, Zuckerberg built Zucknet, which was a program that actually allowed computers at his house and his dad's dental office to talk to each other. By high school, he'd whipped up the Synapse media player, using machine learning to adapt to a user's listening habits. Then, moving into his sophomore year at Harvard, he creates Course Match, helping students pick their classes based on what their friends were taking. And then, boom, February 2004, the launch of the Facebook. The takeaway here, he wasn't just playing computer games as a kid, he was relentlessly building them.
But, as you might guess, early innovation came with some early friction. Take FaceMash, for instance. This was a site he made for ranking student photos. It was so insanely popular that it went up over a weekend, and by Monday morning it was shut down, because it completely crashed Harvard's network switches, literally cutting off internet access for students. But even more importantly, it sparked his first major controversy over user permission and privacy. Students complained their photos were being used without consent, and Zuckerberg actually had to publicly apologize.
Which brings us to a pretty fascinating question. What exactly happens when a controversial college dorm project scales to billions of users? How does that underlying culture of rapid, boundary-pushing development translate to the real world?
Well, that leads us right into Chapter 2, the hacker way, scaling to Silicon Valley. Zuckerberg knew early on that Facebook couldn't just stay a Harvard thing forever. So, dropping out of college to focus on the project full-time, he and his co-founders started this highly methodical expansion. They strategically targeted other elite institutions first, places like Columbia, NYU, Stanford, before finally opening the floodgates to the general public. He moved operations out to Palo Alto, California, and fully embraced that mythical Silicon Valley ecosystem.
To fuel that insane growth, he leaned on a very specific ethos. It's okay to break things to make them better. This philosophy totally drove the company's culture. He started holding these regular hackathons, basically wild, all-night coding sessions fueled by music, junk food, and beer, where the absolute goal was to dream up and build something entirely new in just one single night.
Now, his vision quickly evolved from a simple website into an inescapable mobile ecosystem. Step 1 was aggressive acquisitions of massive platforms, specifically Instagram and WhatsApp. Step 2, by 2019, Zuckerberg laid out these big plans for an end-to-end encrypted system across his platforms. And then Step 3, by 2020, we actually saw the physical integration of chat systems across Instagram and Messenger on both iOS and Android. He was essentially building a tightly woven web of global communication.
But amidst building this trillion-dollar enterprise, we have this surprising little number, $1. Despite his massive personal wealth, starting on January 1st, 2013, Zuckerberg's base annual salary was officially reduced to just a single dollar.
Of course, total global connection brings unprecedented global scrutiny. So let's move to Chapter 3, under the microscope. We're going to take an objective look at the intense legal and political battles this rapid growth has attracted over the years.
Honestly, the sheer volume of legal battles he's faced is staggering, and it spans his entire career. We're talking everything from the very origins of Facebook with the ConnectU lawsuit and early financial disputes with his co-founder Eduardo Saverin, to local property issues regarding Hawaiian land ownership. On a global scale, he's faced the massive Cambridge Analytica data scandal, received congressional subpoenas over Section 230 and allegations of anti-conservative censorship, and is currently dealing with massive litigation regarding teen mental health. So historically, how has Zuckerberg reacted to these crises? Well, looking at the data, with ConnectU, where the Winklevoss twins allegedly stole their ideas, it resulted in a settlement of 1.2 million shares and $20 million in cash. Later, when he filed quiet title lawsuits against native Hawaiian landowners on Kauai, the public backlash was huge. He ended up dropping the lawsuits and apologizing for not understanding the local history. And more recently, during a 2024 Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on child safety, he actually stood up and apologized directly to the families of children who were victims of online harm.
The ongoing litigation is particularly revealing, though. In a lawsuit initiated by Massachusetts, internal communications and court documents allege that Zuckerberg personally rejected Meta's own internal proposals to improve teenagers' mental health. The documents claim he consistently opposed efforts to enhance well-being on Facebook and Instagram, essentially overriding his own senior executives, including the head of Instagram and the global affairs president.
To understand why this matters, just consider this number, 30 million. That's the estimated number of teenagers on Instagram in the US alone whose digital lives are directly impacted by these internal platform decisions. It really highlights his absolute, substantial influence on decisions impacting billions of users globally. On top of that, a New Mexico lawsuit alleges he approved allowing minors to access AI chatbot companions, despite explicit warnings from safety staffers about potential sexual interactions. It's a deeply disturbing claim that really underscores the severe dangers of unmonitored AI access for children.
So the crucial point here is this. How does the media portray a figure facing such massive, unending global scrutiny? And how does he attempt to shape his own legacy in response?
Let's wrap things up with Chapter 4, Media and Philanthropy. We're going to contrast the man you see on screen with the man behind the money.
Back in 2010, Hollywood released The Social Network, a huge film depicting the founding of Facebook, and his genuine reaction to the movie? I just wish that nobody made a movie of me while I was still alive. The film's accuracy was heavily disputed right from the start. Tech journalists pointed out that while some factual incidents were in there, the overall impression of Zuckerberg as this cruel, sarcastic, or socially inept nerd who would deliberately betray a friend was highly distorted. Even the screenwriter, Aaron Sorkin, straight up admitted he prioritized storytelling over strict factual fidelity.
But his most tangible legacy might actually be his philanthropy, which brings us to the fascinating concept of philanthrocapitalism. When Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla Chan decided to dedicate their wealth to charity, they didn't create a traditional nonprofit foundation like Bill Gates or Warren Buffett. Instead, they made a rather controversial choice to structure the Chan-Zuckerberg Initiative as a limited liability company, or LLC.
And the sheer scale of this pledge is breathtaking. In 2015, they committed to transferring 99% of their Facebook shares, which were then valued at around $45 billion, to the Chan-Zuckerberg Initiative over the course of their lives. Their stated goal? To advance human potential and promote equality.
And they immediately put this into action. For example, ZSI gave $600 million to create the Chan-Zuckerberg BioHub in San Francisco to foster collaboration between major universities. But, tying back to that LLC structure, unlike traditional foundations that mandate open access to all funded research, the BioHub actually retains the right to commercialize any research it funds, though inventors can choose to make their discoveries open source. It is a very, very Silicon Valley approach to charity.
Which brings us to the core takeaway of this explainer. Mark Zuckerberg represents a profoundly complex legacy. On one hand, he's a pioneer of global connection, who totally rewired human interaction, and he's made unprecedented philanthropic pledges. Yet on the other hand, that exact same legacy is permanently shadowed by intense political, legal, and social scrutiny over the real harm and controversy those very platforms have generated. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to ponder. With absolute unrivaled control over platforms that fundamentally shape our global reality, paired with a massive pledge to give his fortune away, what will be Mark Zuckerberg's true legacy? Will he be remembered as the architect of connection or the architect of controversy? Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the data around you.